Make the concession. Come on, do it again, the third time. So I would say the first condition of peace will make concessions, obviously. We'll have to make territorial concessions, and that's hard. This is our ancestral homeland. This is the land of the Bible.
Would you give up East Jerusalem? Everyone tells me you would if it came to it.
Well, I don't know what everybody is saying. I'll tell you what we say. We say that Jerusalem has to remain united under Israel. That's our position going into the negotiations. I know it's a very emotional issue for the Palestinians. So we've agreed, I've agreed, to have this issue brought up in the negotiations.
Could you imagine?
We'll have to look for a very creative solution here.
I understand, but that's what you need to do.
And
if you made let me finish this. If you made the big move, you know that the international community, and crucially America, would be absolutely side by side with it. They want this to happen. And also, it's no longer just about Israel and the Palestinians. It's about the whole region. The whole region's unstable. You have many battles to fight now.
The instability in the region is not a result of Israel and the Palestinians. That was never the cause of this instability. It's the dysfunctionality of many of these societies that have failed to modernize.
No, that wasn't the point I was making. The point I was making, though, is that it's no longer the only story in town, is it?
No, it's not.
But isn't this a good time? I mean, ironically, we're sitting here now with this part of the region being one of the calmer places. Isn't that the perfect time to make this happen?
If you can be sure of who your partner will be tomorrow, you're not even sure of that. You want to make sure that you have solid bulwarks of security, and you also want mutual reconciliation. We recognize the rights of the Palestinians for a state of their own, even though they're sitting in part of our ancestral homeland. It's very painful to do that, but I've been doing it. I've been saying it. But they refuse to say that they recognize a Jewish state, a nation state for the Jewish people. I'm talking about those, I'm not talking about Hamas. I'm talking about the Palestinian Authority that should confront Hamas and confront their own people and say, hey, it's over. We give up the ghosts of dismantling Israel or dissolving Israel or flooding it with refugees. It's over. No more war, no more bloodshed. Just as Sadat said, I want to hear that clear statement.
Israel's doing very well economically. You've been growing at 5% a year for a while. There's a real boom going on. Meanwhile, in the Palestinian refugee camps, the conditions are appalling. So you have a real them and us situation. There's no real urgency, and you could easily hide if you wanted to. I'm not saying you are doing this, but you could hide behind all the turmoil in the Middle East and say, you know what, we don't need to do this right now.
Not at all. First of all, the Palestinian economy has been growing at 10%.
But there's no equivalence between what's happening in Israel and the state of the refugees in Gaza. It can't be. Come on.
No, Gaza is growing now at 17% because we lifted all the
restrictions. But you wouldn't want your family living there, would you?
No, of course not. Certainly, I think the people of Gaza would like to be relieved of this Hamas tyranny and this medievalism.
We'll take another short break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about Israel's position in the world now and the international community's view of Israel.
And American CNN.
Caller, click. They're prepared. To picking up on a point you made just before the break, the Palestinians have said that they're prepared to bring Hamas into government. What is your position? Could you ever imagine having any kind of workable administration that involved Hamas?
Can you imagine a peace deal with Al-Qaeda? I mean, of course not.
You could never
That is Hamas.
Well, if
Hamas has a constitution. If it tore it up, and the constitution calls for the annihilation of Israel. Not only that, but the expansion of radical Islam throughout the region and the world. If they got rid of that, yes, I could contemplate that. If they stopped firing rockets or importing now rockets to launch on our cities, as we just intercepted some Iranian rockets yesterday that were intended for Hamas. If they stop terrorism, if they stop calling for our eradication, yes, of course, we'll be happy to talk to them. But the fact is, Hamas has not stopped being Hamas. Hamas continues to call for our liquidation. So what am I going to negotiate with them? The method of our decapitation? The method of their exterminating us? Of course not. Any country would take a stand against somebody that's completely committed to its obliteration.
Can I ask you about the suggestion in parts of the media that there is a growing tide of anti-Semitism in Europe? Do you believe that there is? And if so, why?
First of all, there's a difference in the way that Europeans view Israel and Americans view Israel, but there's also anti-Semitism in Europe. There is the new boiling anti-Semitism of radical Islam that sweeps Europe as a whole, and there's a strange fusion, it's the only word I can use to describe it, a fusion with the anti-Semitism of the radical far, far left. And you know, this is the strangest union you could possibly contemplate, because the radical Muslims, you know, they stone women, they execute gays, they're against any human rights and all, against feminism, against what have you. And the far left that is supposed to be for these things, they all unite on one thing, you know, bashing Israel, bashing the Jewish state. And that's a terrible union, and one that I think should be excoriated and should be condemned, because the last thing these people have in mind is peace.
But what happens if your continued inability to move this process forward means the international community decide that they're going to go away from you, go with the Palestinians, let them set up a state of Palestine, recognize it officially? Where does that leave you?
Well, in fact, that's what they're doing. They're actually accelerating the movement away from peace, because when the international community says to Israel, you're the only one who has to compromise, but they don't ask the Palestinians to compromise, to actually recognize the Jewish state, to understand that we'll have to have security arrangements, otherwise we could get Iran walking in again, a third time, into territory that we vacate.
Are the Americans doing enough now?
If the international community says, hey, listen, let's just line up with what the Palestinians say, why should the Palestinians negotiate? Why should they compromise? Peace requires mutual compromise.
But that can't be good for Israel if that happens. And that could happen.
But in fact, it's happening because a lot in the international community who think that they're advancing peace are lining up unilaterally with the Palestinian demands. And in fact, what they're doing is they're pushing peace further away, because rather than compromise, the Palestinians say, we don't have to do anything.
There's another way of looking at it. They're just pushing Israel away. And isn't that worrying for you? I mean, what they're doing is isolating you and saying, if you don't do a deal here, and you're in a position to do this, well, okay, we're going to bypass you. And that puts you in a more isolated position, doesn't it?
You can't bypass the parties to peace. You can't impose peace from the outside. You can't have a fiat or a dictum that says, thou shalt have peace. I'm prepared to negotiate a final agreement, but I need a partner. That partner right now, because of the international reflexive attitude against Israel, that puts the onus on Israel's side. Israel is proven guilty, is judged guilty until proven guilty. And the Palestinians are deemed innocent. And I say, stop giving them a pass. You want peace? You have to get both sides to compromise. And above all, you have to get both sides to sit down and negotiate.
When was the last time you spoke to President Obama about this?
Oh, I speak to him regularly.
And is he as supportive now as he's always been?
I think there's no question he's expressed his support for Israel, especially for Israel's security, and I have to say that he's acted on it in ways that are not commonly known, because the United States has recently supported our anti-missile defense. We cooperate in security in ways that people don't normally know. So there's been important cooperation.
Is he personally pushing you to make this happen? Is he saying, we need to do this? What can I do, President Obama, to help you, Prime Minister Netanyahu, make this deal happen?
He's said that quite a few times, and I told him what I think is required, and we're engaging in this discussion. I have to tell you, a lot of it is not public.
The whole world is looking at Prime Minister Netanyahu to do something. They're looking to you to be the hero, not to be the villain. And I can't believe, given your love of history, given your position in Jewish history, that you don't want to be that guy that delivers what the world wants you to deliver.
Well, then, if I end up meeting your expectations, you'll have to invite me back to another interview, won't you?
I will do that with great pleasure.
Well, I'll come with great pleasure.
Prime Minister, I look forward to it.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.